Our top story, leaders are updating reporters at City Hall right now about Chicago's efforts to shelter and assist migrants being bused here from Texas. The latest numbers show more than 3 buses are expected today, and dozens of advocates for immigrants' rights renewed their push to make sure those migrants can work when they get here. WBBM's Brandon Ison with the story.
Permisos para quién?
Local elected officials joined immigrant workers, community members, and other leaders chanting their demands for President Joe Biden loudly in a small plaza while holding umbrellas in the rain. Work permits now.
My father was deported over 12 years ago.
17-year-old Mahalia Velasco says that her father, undocumented and working in the U.S. for decades, was never offered a work permit, about 500,000 of which have now been afforded recently arrived asylum seekers.
But he still paid his taxes, and he still worked hard every single day of his life, just like many of our people.
And while she's not yet old enough to vote, she says that her siblings are, and that there is a larger push to register and organize the Latino vote.
So us as Latinos can show the power in numbers and be the largest Latino voters to turn out in history.
Chicago is home to more than 180,000 undocumented workers, and they're among more than 11 million working and living across the U.S.
If he will not give us protection, we will not vote him in the re-election.
In Pilsen, Brandon Ison, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Our top local story on News Radio WBBM. 2 women were wounded by gunfire last night as they sat in the outfield at Guaranteed Rate Field while the White Sox played the Oakland Athletics. WBBM's Mike Krauser reports.
It happened at about 7:30 p.m. during the 3rd inning. Most of the people in the ballpark were unaware. Someone who was sitting in left field near where the women were wounded said he didn't hear any shots. He just saw a woman bleeding from a leg.
Anger and frustration have characterized a city council hearing on how Chicago is handling the migrant crisis. WBBM political editor Craig Dellimore reports from City Hall.
At one point, Chairman Andre Vasquez halted the Immigration and Refugee Rights Committee meeting because some in the audience would not stop shouting down speakers until they were threatened with removal. 20th Ward Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor said she understood their anger that new migrant shelters seem to end up only in Black and Latino wards.
Lamar Robertson already had a shelter. Alderwoman Dow already had one. Why do we continue to split them in the same places?
And Deputy Mayoral Chief of Staff Christina Pacioni-Zayas said the city's procurement system doesn't allow them to set up new sites quickly enough.
We do have to evaluate this system and how it has historically harmed communities and kept us out. But at the same time, we don't control the flow of buses. And even if we wanted to say, don't come, they coming.
Alderwoman Pat Dowell said shelters should be put in all wards, not just Black and brown ones. At City Hall, Craig Dellimore, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
But our top local story here on News Radio WBBM, after weeks of fueling up, NASCAR is now burning rubber in downtown Chicago as its first ever street race takes over parts of Grant Park. Our own Brandon Ison has been talking with spectators along the course.
Thousands of ticket holders making their way into the event, while outside the barriers, at least at the corner of Jackson and South Michigan Avenue, dozens of non-ticket holders are getting a pretty prime view through a steel mesh barrier.
And our top story, breaking news at Northwestern University. Joining us live with more information at the English Desk, WBBM's Judson Richards.
Hi, Keith. Yes, it felt inevitable at this point. Northwestern has fired head football coach Pat Fitzgerald. Here's how it all unraveled. It felt like in just about 3 days. Fitzgerald's firing comes in the wake of a 2-week unpaid suspension that was announced by the school on Friday following a university commission investigation into hazing allegations surrounding the program.
An amazing piece of performing technology will make its world premiere in Chicago next month.
A performance at the Lyric Opera for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing is about to change dramatically.
This is the first sort of more commercial rollout worldwide.
The so-called Sound Shirt allows audience members to experience live opera enhanced by real-time vibrations. Brad Dunn with the Lyric says it's a game changer for the hard of hearing and the live music experience.
There's no reason why this couldn't be adopted by companies all over the world, whether it's musical theater, live rock and roll, nightclubs.
While the orchestra and artists perform in the pit and on stage, microphones capture their sound and transform it into a digital feed for those wearing the Sound Shirt.
It's literally the perfect application of technology to enhance the thing we actually do, which is classical music.
The wearable technology will make its debut at the Opera House for the first time on October 1st. Lisa Fielding, 105.9 WBBM.
Each Tuesday, we look at people and organizations doing positive things to help others. With this week's Difference Maker, here's WBBM's Carolina Garibay with a look at a local kids theater camp that inspires young actors.
Campers at Chicago Kids Company, better known as CKC, are running through a dress rehearsal of Willy Wonka Jr. It's the day before opening night, and the kids say they're nervous but mostly excited.
I like the feeling of when they say 5 minutes till places or something, because then you're like, oh no, I'm nervous, but I'm excited, I can't wait.
Eileen plays Miss TV. She and other campers like Jenna and Natalia are practically CKC veterans.
The camps were definitely like the upbringing of theater for me. Like, it really just opened the doors to like how acting and singing and dancing can really like connect people.
I don't know my life without like every June, July, whenever the camp is every year, like without starting my summers or ending my summers here. Like, this is like makes my summer. It's like the best part every year. Like, I love it.
CKC has even made an impression on newcomers like Aiden, who plays Willy Wonka.
I haven't been here too long, and already I can't imagine my summers without CKC. Like, I can't imagine what else I would be doing. There's been so much memories that you really just can't forget.
And that kind of passion is something co-founders Paige Kaufman and Jesus Perez say they envisioned when they started the camps 31 years ago.
To see the kids every summer, be so happy, it brings us back. We love having them come back and do it again. So seeing their joy brings us joy.
We've heard many times parents say, my child has found his home, has found their place. This is what makes them happy. This is what makes them be themselves. Parents have said to us, I've never seen my child smile like that before.
Carolina Garibay, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
3 months after he was fired over a hazing scandal, former head football coach Pat Fitzgerald is now suing Northwestern University for wrongful termination, defamation, and breach of contract. The details from WBBM's Nancy Harty.
Attorney Dan Webb says the lawsuit seeks $130 million for what Pat Fitzgerald had remaining on his coaching contract and lost future job earnings, plus unspecified punitive damages.
There was not any significant hazing that occurred at Northwestern, and yet my client was terminated for no reason whatsoever.
He points to a comment made days before firing Fitzgerald in which University President Michael Schill said there was no evidence the coach was aware of any hazing.
No coach in America could have done what Coach Fitzgerald did in developing what are known as due diligence programs to prevent hazing from occurring.
Northwestern says Fitzgerald had the responsibility to know hazing was occurring and to stop it, but failed to. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Some residents of Brighton Park continue to protest Mayor Johnson's plan to erect a migrant base camp in their backyard.
The horns are honking in support of the protesters here at 38th and California as dump trucks file in and out of the 10-acre site. One said we're not against them, but we're not with them either, meaning, of course, the migrants.
And do you feel like the city just kind of forced this on the neighborhood?
It's forcing it not in the neighborhood, in Chicago, I believe.
Truthfully, there's going to be a lot of problems.
Why do you think that?
Well, right now, there's a lot of problems around here. There's robberies and everything over here. You don't think these are going to double?
Some opposing this site are immigrants themselves. A sign affixed to a fence across the street reads, "We are uneasy and scared." A lawsuit has been filed, raising concerns about what's being stirred up in the soil on the site. In Brighton Park, Mike Krauser, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Lots of news at Hallis Hall dealing with a sudden change in coaching ranks and a quarterback running from words rather than a defensive line.
A news-filled day here in Lake Forest is culminating with the resignation of the Bears defensive coordinator. Alan Williams says he is, quote, taking a step back to take care of his health and his family. It is not clear what health problem Williams needs to address. He first stepped away for what were called personal reasons last week. Also, this morning, quarterback Justin Fields seemed to say coaching, his word, was part of the reason why he felt robotic, his word, and was overthinking, again, his word, in Tampa on Sunday. After practice, he cleared that up.
I'm not blaming anything on the coaches. I'm never going to blame anything on the coaches, never going to blame anything on my teammates. I will take whatever happens in the game, I will take all the blame. I don't care if it's a drop pass, it should have been a pass. Put it on me.
Fields says the bottom line is he has to play better. That's it. Two more Bears notes. Tackle Braxton Jones on injured reserve with a neck problem, though he was in the locker room today. And all this is happening on General Manager Ryan Pohl's birthday. At Hallis Hall, Rick Gregg, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
traffic and weather together on the 8th. Beau Duran is here with the latest problems on the CTA.
Yeah, the CTA Yellow Line, the Skokie Swift, has been shut down. This is because of a crash where a CTA Yellow Line train struck the back of some snow removal equipment in the CTA yard, but passengers were on the Yellow Line train as it pulled into the Howard station. So what we have is multiple ambulances on the scene.
We have breaking news from federal court in downtown Chicago, where Ed Burke, one of the longest-serving members of the Chicago City Council and one of the most powerful members of that body for decades, has been convicted of racketeering. The verdict read just seconds ago in federal court.
A family-owned grocery store in West Suburban Forest Park, where everybody knows your name, is closing down.
There are a million stories on the now almost barren shelves of Ed's Way, and as loyal, often tearful customers were coming in for perhaps the very last time, Ed Nutley, the Ed in Ed's Way, shared one of his favorites.
On Christmas that I opened up to just check in the machines, and one of the customers were banging at the door. They forgot to get some spaghetti or something like that. I let him in. He went and got his spaghetti, and then he said, well, hey, I got no money. I said, get me tomorrow. And then the way he went, I seen him Monday. So, yeah, that's how things go.
Ed's Way has had a tougher time lately competing with larger corporate grocery stores. So now the family-owned gem that was always just a few steps away is saying goodbye. Deborah Holstein has been shopping at Ed's for years.
A lot of us have depended on Ed's, and Ed is a very kind and generous person, as is the rest of his family, and we're going to miss them terribly.
Terry Keshner, 105.9 WBBM.
Community organizations are out this weekend hoping to send newly arrived migrants into the new year with a full stomach. WBBM's Brandon Ison reports.
You know, come on now, you eating good food.
That description of a warm meal served outside in nearly freezing temperatures to dozens of migrants outside a shelter on South Halstead comes from local chef Michael Earhart, founder of the nonprofit Taste for the Homeless.
Good food, good food. Come on.
A pre-New Year's meal done Chicago style, says Chef Earhart. So what's on the menu?
We have everything from soul food, from baked macaroni, green beans, spaghetti, corn muffins, mac and cheese. Everything you need, we have.
Earhart tells us that he was among the first to respond last year when the first migrant-filled buses arrived in the area. He now offers hot meals every day to anyone, regardless of how long they've lived in the city. He does this through donations and out of his own pocket. He's among the growing number of community members willing and able to help, but still waiting on that call from the city to bring all of these organizations together for a more coordinated response to this humanitarian crisis. On the Lower West Side, Brandon Ison, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Yellow Line trains have been running again this morning, the first since a November crash. CTA leadership just stopped talking to reporters a short time ago. WBBM's Nancy Harty joins us live from Skokie with what they had to say.
Cisco CTA President Dorval Carter says in the 7 weeks since the crash that injured 7 workers and dozens of riders, the agency conducted a thorough review before running Yellow Line trains once again.
We would only make this decision after we had absolute confidence that we could do so safely. And we are here to tell you that we have that confidence.
That confidence, he says, comes from interim measures that mean Yellow Line trains will only go 35 miles an hour at their fastest instead of the old 55, and cleaning a stretch of grade level track from any debris where the crash took place. There was a lot Carter did not talk about in the NTSB investigation because he says they are not publicly allowed to until the final report sometime later this year. Reporting live in Skokie at the Oakton station, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Our top local story on WBBM, the battle for Cook County State's Attorney remains too close to call, but Eileen O'Neill Burke and her supporters remain optimistic into the early morning hours. WBBM's Terry Keshner.
Eileen O'Neill Burke finally addressed her many supporters at RPM events on the 300 block of North Clark just after 10 p.m. She said moving the Cook County State's Attorney's office in a new direction is what the people and prosecutors all want.
While we cannot declare a victory yet, I know that every single assistant state's attorney, past or present, knows that feeling of pride when they stand up in court and say, I am here on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois.
And O'Neill Burke said it was important for all to know that she and her backers put their heart and soul into the campaign. Terry Keshner, 105.9 WBBM.
Meanwhile, supporters of her opponent, Clayton Harris III, also remained optimistic.
This is Andy Dane at Clayton Harris III headquarters, where there was no celebration, but no defeat either.
Let's march forward, hand in hand, towards a future where safety and justice are not just aspirations, but the reality here in Cook County.
The former prosecutor told supporters the fight isn't over until each vote is counted, and vowed to fight for all Cook County residents, regardless of the outcome.
Family, friends, and supporters of Graciela Guzman filled Revolution Brewing in Logan Square, celebrating her win in a state Senate primary.
The sounds of cheers, drinks toasting, and congratulations for Graciela Guzman could probably be heard all throughout Kedzie Avenue. She beat incumbent Natalie Toro, who was appointed to the seat back in July. Among Guzman's supporters, Estrella, who says it's refreshing to see residents use their voices to vote for someone who isn't just the incumbent.
We should be voting for people based on what they believe in, based on their values, based on what issues they want to tackle, not because they were in that seat the year prior.
And Cesario says it's Guzman's compassion and love that resonated so deeply with voters.
You can't buy that, you can't fake that, and really we've been in struggle together, and that's really ultimately what brought most of these people here. In some way, their connection to Graciela is connection to movement and struggle for a better lives for all of us.
Carolina Garibay, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Generations of Chicagoans and visitors have encountered the lingering smell of chocolate in the making every time they pass the Blommer Chocolate Company's flagship factory in the River West neighborhood. But the company today confirmed that one of the city's signature aromas is about to go away for good. WBBM's Terry Kester live on the Newsline in front of the factory at Kinsey and Des Plaines.
Yeah, Keith, even on a cold, snowy, windy day like this, you can still smell the chocolate. We just got a whiff of it a moment ago, but not for much longer, as Blommer Chocolate does confirm it is closing its plant here on the 600 block of West Kinsey. Mark Ortman is going to miss that smell of chocolate.
Mr. Ortman, you live in this area. You live right across from Blommers. The smell is going to disappear, apparently.
Yeah, that's not ideal. It was one of the reasons we moved over to this area, and we have a balcony facing west, so every time we open our patio doors, we get the sweet smell of brownies, so it'll be bittersweet to know that that won't be the case anymore.
Bittersweet. You did not even plan that line, but that was a good one.
It was, yeah.
Several others also telling us they'll miss that smell, as Blommer will now concentrate on its 3 other plants outside of Illinois and move its headquarters to the Merchandise Mart. In the River West neighborhood, Terry Keshner, 105.9 WB.
The largest free blues festival in the world is celebrating 40 years in Chicago this weekend. And today, Lisa Fielding takes us behind the scenes of the legendary Chess Records, which is marking a milestone of its own this year.
You've probably driven by it several times. An unassuming storefront at 2120 South Michigan Avenue. But inside, a living history of the blues and rock and roll.
There aren't many cities that can claim a genre in itself like Chicago can.
Owned by 2 Polish brothers in 1950, Chess Records found a home away from home for the blues in Chicago.
They were one of the most successful record labels and the premier blues, Chicago blues label in the world.
Janine Judge is the executive director of Blues Heaven Foundation, the nonprofit that keeps the history alive.
Willie Dixon started the Blues Heaven Foundation in 1982 with the mission to help promote, protect, and preserve blues.
Willie Dixon was one of the main producers, songwriters, and arrangers of the signature Chess Records sound.
He, of course, wrote many of the songs that became hits recorded in this building and brought many of the artists in that became stars in their own rights. This is Studio A. A lot of stories in this building.
Walk into Studio A and you can feel the magic that was once made in this room.
Muddy Waters recorded here. Buddy Guy recorded here. Etta James recorded at last in the studio.
And on June 10th, a significant anniversary.
This is where it all happened, including the Rolling Stones sessions in 1964.
The 113-year-old building is also an historic landmark. But Judge says, as is with many old structures, they need much-needed repairs and restoration.
It's important to save and preserve a building such as this. Rock and roll was pretty much started here in the studio.
Every day, she says, when she walks into the door, she's reminded of the stories.
The echoes that are within these walls are now angels' whispers in my ears.
And the people and the music that changed the world.
Every evening I feel the vibe of these artists here in this building.
Chess will celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Rolling Stones recording sessions next week and 75 years of the historic record label in 2025.
This is basically the birthplace of Chicago blues.
Lisa Fielding, 1059 WBBM.
Our top local story on News Radio WBBM. Some students at Northwestern University are joining a nationwide protest calling for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. WBBM's Nancy Harty's there. She joins us live with the story.
Rachel, students are chanting Free Palestine while linking arms in a line to prevent police from getting at several tents here at Deering Meadow. The student government voted last night in support of a resolution demanding the university end partnerships that they say legitimize genocide, occupation, and war in Gaza. We spoke to a grad student named Eden who says they've been pushing for these demands for some time.
This is not sort of a new demand. We've repackaged it in this sort of people's resolution, but there have been activists on this campus for decades calling for these exact demands. So the university is pretty well aware of what exactly we've been calling for.
From our vantage point here behind a fence near the sidewalk, we could not see pushing that appears to have happened earlier between police and protesters. Northwestern says in a statement the tents violate university policies, and police and staff are working to get them removed, and students who refuse to remove their tents will be subject to arrest. Reporting live from Northwestern, Nancy Harty, News Radio 1059 WBBM.
We're just getting new information about the rescue of a man inside a water tower in the far south suburbs. WBBM's Jim Goodis has been working the phones on this story. He's here at the anchor desk with what we know. Jim.
Lisa, a man who was working in the water tower on Youngs Road along the Des Plaines River apparently was having trouble breathing, so he called 911 from inside the water tower because he couldn't get himself out. Fire departments from several communities in the area sent help to assist Shanahan. One of them was Troy, that brought in a ladder truck, and they were able to get up to the tower, get the man out, and get him down to the ground. At last report, the man was not injured. In fact, he was doing rather well, but he was taken to a hospital as a precaution. Shanahan's fire chief says that there was some serious problems that could have developed if he didn't have the assistance of so many fire departments, including that ladder truck from the Troy Fire Department, in order to get up there and rescue the man. Live at the anchor desk, Jim Goodis, News Radio 1059 WBBM.
Well, we're experiencing another day of extreme heat, but for some of the thousands of new arrivals sent to Chicago from the southern border, this week's wave of potentially dangerous temperatures has been one more challenge to overcome.
It's been 8 months since asylum seekers, many from Venezuela, were bused up to Chicago by Texas Governor Gregg Abbott. We spoke to one family standing outside of a shelter where a few vendors were selling cold drinks and snacks. We asked the father of four what he's been doing during the heat wave. I've just been walking a lot and drinking water. I've also been applying to a lot of jobs, but with my situation of being a migrant, it's hard to get hired. The youngest of the family, just 4 years old. We asked what the situation was like inside the shelter. Normally you can go in and out freely, but inside it's crowded and you're trapped in one room with your whole family. Sarah Herrera, News Radio 1059 WBBM.
Breaking news from News Radio 1059 WBBM.
A shocking development in court today where Highland Park suspect Robert Cremo III was expected to change his plea. We go live now to WBBM's Nancy Harty, who was in the courtroom with the latest. Nancy.
Andy, this is not the outcome survivors and victims of the parade shooting were expecting. We just left the courtroom here and saw the shocked look on many of their faces. Lake County prosecutors read what they said was a negotiated plea with Robert Cremo III that would have him spend natural life in prison plus 30 years if he pleaded guilty to 55 charges, including 7 first-degree murder charges. But when it came time for him to agree to it, he initially failed to respond to Judge Victoria Rossetti, instead sitting silently in a wheelchair we have not seen in court before, by the way. There was a brief recess. He talked with his public defenders, and when he came back, he said in a quiet voice, no. So the trial will go forward scheduled for February of next year. We're expected to hear from maybe some of the survivors, maybe some of their attorneys after here, but as I said, they were shocked by this development. Reporting live from Lake County, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Well, this week, WBBM and our colleagues at Odyssey's 6 other all-news radio stations are taking a close look at youth sports. Everything from the mental health benefits to the potential harm of specializing too soon. WBBM's Josh Liss has today's installment of a series we call State of Play, the Risk and Rewards of Youth Sports.
It's a dangerous word in the world of youth sports, specialization. And doctors like the University of Chicago's Holly Benjamin, a professor of pediatrics, claims it's led to a crisis point.
When you specialize like that, there's increased pressure from peers, but more importantly, parents and coaches to perform successfully now that there's all this focused time and investment in you.
While Dr. Benjamin understands some kids suffer from specializing, others may flourish, according to Brian Duffy, who owns top-tier North Baseball Club and operates around 30 teams with kids ages 8 to 18.
I've seen players with us develop really young, 8, 9 years old, and build up all the way through when they start going into college, and it's a great thing to see, because you see how they develop over time. And you want to learn some of those advanced skills at a young age. And if you could do that from a mechanical standpoint, you're going to be in a really good spot when you hit puberty and then start gaining some strength.
Duffy says a key to specializing in a healthy way is finding people who care about their kid, regardless of what team they're on. And it's not just young athletes Benjamin adds, but child artists and musicians feeling the allure of focusing on just one activity.
It's been years and years in the making of really just pushing youth athletes to higher levels of achievement in sports, as well as early sports specialization has become a problem.
Benjamin points out most successful athletes played multiple sports growing up before specializing. Josh Liss, News Radio WBBM.
A restaurant in downtown Skokie is serving up more than pastries and lunch. WBBM's Nancy Harty has this week's difference maker.
Will's Place employs about 25 people who don't always have an easy time finding work. Jeff Halligan manages the nonprofit and is cousins with Will, who uses a tablet to communicate with customers.
Our main goal is to create a safe place for both, real work for adults with disabilities, as well as a safe place for people to come in who have disabilities, have lunch, spend time with their friends.
Jackie's been working there since the cafe opened in July 2023, serving favorites such as the freshly baked chocolate chip cookies and chicken Caesar wrap.
I love it. We have laughs. We just enjoy each other's company.
The menu started with sandwiches, but head chef Michael Pfeiffer has been adapting it as employees learn.
The biggest thing we like to focus on is growing and getting better. So in the beginning, it was all cold stuff. A lot of it was prepped ahead. Now we're starting to get into more like butchery and being able to use like raw proteins, chicken, steak.
Halligan says relatives tell them employees are picking up more than culinary and serving skills.
Just us providing the opportunity has given all of them the ability to showcase who they are, what they can do, and the confidence that it has given them. It truly is night and day for some of my guys.
Those opportunities include Friday night gatherings for employees and their friends just to hang out. Will's Place, making a difference in Skokie. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.